Welcome to Life Planning 101, brought to you by Kennedy Financial Services of Eastland. Tune in every Monday morning at 8:30 on KATX and again on Saturday morning at 9 on KATX and KWBY as Angela Robinson joins Terry Slavens to share important financial information to help you live life on purpose. Insurance, investments, estate and tax planning, and much more. All covered now on Life Planning 101.
Good morning. Blakeney Hodges sitting in for Mr. Terry Slavens. Week 2. I'm glad to be here.
We have a great topic today, Blakeney, and I am really excited to be able to be here and be talking about it. It's going to be a show of consideration, meaning I'm going to give you food for thought. Lots of food for thought, right?
Lots of it. Get your pens out.
That's right. And it's specifically aimed at farmers and ranchers today, which I know we have a lot right around this area.
Quite a few, yes.
Yes. But also, a lot of this is applicable to family-owned businesses. And I think that's really important. So if you're a family business owner or you're, farm and rancher, today's show is really, really, really for you. And I'm always of the ilk. In fact, I think it's so funny. I go to places and I think about our business everywhere I go. It doesn't matter if it's a hotel, if it's a restaurant, if I'm buying a car or whatever it is. I'm always thinking about our business. And I think the greatest ways to learn in life is usually from another industry. Mm-hmm. And so, I even encourage our listeners that, don't own necessarily a farm and ranch, or don't have stake in a farm and ranch, or don't have a family business, to listen in too, because there's going to be food for thought in here that may be applicable to your situation.
Yes, exactly.
And
exactly.
Never think, it doesn't apply to me.
I don't have a farm and ranch.
That's right. Exactly.
No.
Yep. But I'll tell you kind of where I got this, because this was interesting to me. So the USDA does some statistics every year. And what they came up with is the average age of a farm operator right now is 57 years old in the United States.
I would not have guessed that.
Yeah, 57 years old. So what should they really be considering or have already considered, right? And that's transitioning their farm or ranch and what retirement's going to look like for them. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people at 57, I can tell you this right now, this is their first response. Well, I don't plan to retire. Or I'm on a farm, I'm going to work till I sell it. Or I'm going to work forever. Or, I work as long as I can. Well, what if you can't?
Yeah.
There's sometimes circumstances happen and they're not in our control, right?
Exactly.
How do you plan for that? What do you need to be planning for? And really, you probably need to start planning at 40. But a lot of people don't really get serious until they're what we call empty nesters. That's what we see. And usually it's not even the early empty nesters. Usually we see people, they kind of go through these stages of life that they're busy with kids in school, taking them everywhere, doing all the activities, yada, yada. Kids out of college, it's almost like they just stare in outer space for a few years because they're just so
they literally have about a 2 to 3 year span of just like
overblown.
What do I do now?
Yep. And then they wake up to the reality of, oh my gosh, retirement's not that far away. We need to be starting on this. We need to be working on this. And really, you can never plan too early, but that's been our experience. So 57 is really, getting a little long in the tooth for this, but it's really important. And, I think, a lot of people look at it. They may, especially with farm and ranch, you're looking at family-owned and operated farms, family-owned and operated ranches. And sometimes they're first generation, second generation, and third generation. And, I've always known this because we've done this so much in our history. But something that really caught my eye wasn't until I was actually watching the show Downton Abbey. If you remember in the show, they actually were losing half of the estate because of death. Mm-hmm. Remember that? Mm-hmm. Okay, well, why is that? It's because most farmers, ranchers, estates are land rich and cash poor. So when someone dies, there's usually taxes involved. Mm-hmm. And it can be a hefty number of taxes. So, how do you protect against all that? And what do you need to be considering? So we call this the who, what, when, how, SAM, and plan approach. And that's what we're going to be kind of going over today is some considerations in all of these. The who, the what, the when, the how, the Sam, and I bet you can figure that one out, Uncle Sam.
I was actually going to ask, so I'm glad. I was like, I'm thinking, I'm not for sure, so I'm glad that she said.
And plan approach. And when we come back, we're actually going to start with the who, which is probably, of all things, the most important.
The who.
The who.
The who. Life Planning 101 right here on KATX and KWBY. Keep it tuned. Don't go anywhere. Stuff that you need to know. Welcome back into Life Planning 101 right here on KATX and KWBY. Ms. Angela in the studio.
Good morning again, and great topic again today. Farm and ranch, also small business, kind of applicable here. And we kind of talked about, really, the fact that people need to be planning early when it comes to this stuff. And I think the biggest reason why is because most farmers and ranchers and small business owners, family business owners are land rich, or business rich, cash poor. And so and the first thing to address, we talked about, we're going to talk about who, what, when, how, Sam, and plan. But the who, I think, is probably the most important thing of all this. And the reason why is if you think about your family, let's just imagine you got 2 or 3 kids. Do you think all of them are going to want to be there at the ranch and stay forever? No. Do you think all of them are going to want to be in the business? No. It never happens.
Or any of them.
It's never, or any of them, right?
Yeah.
That's exactly right. So, figuring out that who is probably the hardest thing. And I think, and that also conflicts with the age, right? Because we were just talking about empty nesters. And if you have people in college or kids in college, or that age, they may not have a clue what they want to do yet, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And so having to make those decisions at this moment is really tough. I can speak from a secondhand experience here. My husband he was actually raised on an Angus ranch in Montana. And his mom and dad were just certain that he was going to come to school in Texas and come back home and manage that ranch. And he finally, and this was after he'd been in Texas since 1996, and I think it was 2003, he finally said, Mom, Dad, I'm not coming home. And they kept thinking he was coming home, and he didn't come home. So they finally had to sell the ranch because none of the 3, you just said it, none of the 3 of their children actually wanted to take that over. It was a big responsibility to take over. So, that who is huge. And, waiting to plan for that what if of who or who may not may be too late, and I'm just going to give you a really sad scenario here because I think it's really important. We actually we went through this with a client. They found out none of their kids wanted to come in the business, but it was almost too little too late. It was during 2008, and this gentleman became disabled. He ended up going off of his horse, getting kicked, and he was paralyzed from the waist down, and he was forced to sell his ranch. Couldn't find anybody to lease it out during this time, right? It was really, really downward pressure on the whole economy, not just farm and ranch economy. And he couldn't find buyers because nobody could get lending during that time.
Yeah.
And he had to fire sell his ranch, and he expected it was about half of what it would have been worth in 2007. And then when you added the taxes on top of that, it ended up being about 70% less than that. So, he really took it in the shorts. And, a little bit of planning would have gone a long way for his situation because all of that can be avoided. And people are thinking, well, how can it be avoided? Well, this is why I come on the radio every week, is to make sure this is your food for thought to let you know we are here. So
it's called life planning.
That's right. But, I think that's really important that people really think about that ahead of time and think about those what ifs. We call them the devil's advocate situation. What about the what? For a lot of people that are farmers and ranchers or family business owners, and it usually starts from a small business, there's a lot of pride in what you've done over your life, right?
Yes, what you've built.
That's right. It's your legacy. And, for a lot of people, they don't want to see it sold. They don't want to see it go to use for something else. I speak from a firsthand experience here. My dad, he grew up very, very poor. And his dream was to have a lake out his front door and 1,000 acres out his back door. He said, I remember sitting in a tree when I was a small kid, and that's all I ever wanted.
Yeah.
And he worked really, really, really hard to have what he has. Mm-hmm. And I can promise you this, my dad doesn't ever want to see his place developed on because, it took a lot of pride to get there, right? So, we understand that empathy, and we're empathetic to that. And for a lot of people, it's a balance of how do I provide for my own retirement? Maybe I don't have any children that want to continue in my business. Maybe I don't have any children, and still yet preserve this. Well, again, it can be done, but it has to be planned for. And I think that's another, big what the elephant in the room of making sure that you're getting it out there in the open. And what about the when? So do you plan to plow till you die? Right? Or what if you can't? And there's always the planned exit strategy and then the what if exit strategy. And sometimes people are really good at that planned exit strategy, or they think they're really good at that planned exit strategy. At least they have it in their mind what they would like to be done. Maybe the particulars aren't there, but they have it in their mind. But what they don't have is they don't have the what if exit strategy. When we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more about that and the how, the Sam being Uncle Sam, and the plan approach.
Keep it tuned right here. Life Planning 101, right here at KTX KWBY. Welcome back in to Life Planning 101 right here on KATX and KWBY. Back here with Miss Angela Canada Robinson.
Yes, and we're talking about farmers and ranchers, small business owners that are family-oriented, transitioning in retirement. We've kind of talked about the who, we've talked about the what. We've talked a little bit about the when. When do you plan to exit your business, or what if you don't get the chance? And I think something we often forget. I actually encountered this last week, and they were saying, well, I'm going to be fine if I retire. What about your spouse? Have you thought about that? Yeah. You remember, with Social Security, that you may lose half that income if something happens to one of you. Does that make a difference?
Yeah.
And it's a big planning thing, right? And then there's the how, the how all this happens. And I think that's really important, because a lot of people, what we see they do is they end up going to 3 or 4 different professionals that work independently of each other, and they're going to get different answers. Because maybe you didn't tell them everything that you told this professional. Maybe they needed more information. Maybe it was just bits and pieces of advice, and they try to intermingle it together. And then what ends up happening is some big mistakes. And actually, that's how we came into play. That's how we actually became a business in 1989. That was what my dad saw the need for people to do, was to pull all their professionals together and someone to play quarterback. And that's why we have a job. So is to make sure that people don't have holes, overlaps, gaps, and all of this.
Yeah.
Because it's really, really, really important. When you're talking about a farm and ranch, we see this commonly. You see people that have $5 million, $10 million, $15 million of land, equipment, and cattle, and they have no cash. So there's a lot of planning that needs to be done there. When you think about, we'll just jump right into Uncle Sam. We actually had this happen last year. We had a gentleman, he's got one child, he's divorced, and he has an $11 million ranch, and he was going to pay over $2.5 million in taxes before we met him. His estate would, his daughter would. And where was she going to get that cash? There was no cash.
Yeah.
And what if it happened to be in 2008 when he passed, and they had to fire sell everything? She got pennies on the dollar, right?
Yeah.
So, making sure that all that's taken care of. Another thing we see people do is they actually try to transfer land or transfer titles before death. I'd say that's probably one of the biggest mistakes.
Really?
Yes, because there's a little thing in the tax code called a step up in basis that is so powerful for farmers and ranchers. When you gift someone a piece of land, they take over your cost basis in that land. Well, suppose you took over your parents' cost basis, so your cost basis in that land is $25 an acre, and it's worth $3,000 an acre today. Well, you're going to pay taxes on $2,775 an acre. Right?
Yeah.
Whereas if you die, it steps up to the current value of that land. So you actually get, your cost basis is $3,000.
Yeah.
So if you sell it, there's no tax, right? We see people do this all the time, and they do it because, well, I've got to do it because what if I need long-term care? What if I need this? What if I need that? Right. Talk to somebody. It's really, really important. We have this little deal, and I want to share this. It takes a minute to read it, but it's really good. It's called, "It Doesn't Pay to Try to Do the Job Alone." But before I get to that, follow us on Twitter at KFS Life Planning and answer our weekly poll. Regarding your legacy planning, do you plan for the what ifs with a transition and retirement specialist, or are you trying to do the job alone? Yes or no? No bias. Your poll, we can't see who you are. Just answer us. We want to know, right? And while you're there, subscribe to our newsletter, Kennedy-financial.com. But doesn't pay to do the job alone. This actually came from The Road to Financial Success, Strategies to Build Personal Wealth and Protecting It by Joseph Madara. We've been using this little poem for over 20 years in our business, by the way.
Oh.
Yes. Dear Sir, I am writing in response to your request for additional information. In block number 3 of the accident reporting form, I put trying to do the job alone as the cause of my accident. You said in your letter that I should explain more fully, and I trust the following details will be sufficient. Besides, just so you know, he's trying to submit an insurance claim, this gentleman. Okay? I'm a bricklayer by trade. On the day of the accident, I was working alone on the roof of a new 6-story building. When I completed my work, I discovered I had about 500 pounds of brick left over. Rather than carrying the bricks down by hand, I decided to lower them in a barrel using a pulley, which fortunately was attached to the side of the building on the 6th floor. Securing the rope at ground level, I went up to the roof, swung the barrel out, and loaded the brick into it. Then I went back down to ground level, untied the rope, holding it tightly to ensure a slow descent of 500 pounds of brick. You will note in block 11 of the accident reporting form that I weigh 135 pounds. Due to my surprise at being jerked off the ground so suddenly, I lost my presence of mind and forgot to let go of the rope. Needless to say, I proceeded at a rather rapid rate up the side of the building. In the vicinity of the 3rd floor, I met the barrel coming down. This explains the fractured skull and the broken collarbone. Slowed on slightly, I continued my rapid ascent, not stopping until my fingers on my right hand were 2 knuckles deep into the pulley. Unfortunately, by this time I had regained my presence of mind and was able to hold tightly to the rope in spite of my pain. At approximately the same time, however, the bottom fell out of the barrel. Remember, this is a 500-pound barrel of bricks. To avoid the weight of the bricks, the barrel now weighed approximately 50 pounds.
Oh, no.
I refer you again to my weight in block 11, 135 pounds. As you might imagine, I began a rapid descent down the side of the building. In the vicinity of the 3rd floor, I met the barrel coming up. This accounts for the 2 fractured ankles and the lacerations on my legs and lower body. The encounter with the barrel slowed me enough to lessen my injuries when I fell onto a pile of bricks, and fortunately, only 3 vertebrae were cracked. I am sorry to report, however, that as I lay here on the bricks in pain, unable to stand and watching the empty barrel 6 stories above me, I again lost my presence of mind and let go of the rope. The moral of the story is don't try to do the job alone.
Yes.
We're all 135 pounders trying to lift a 500-pound barrel load when it comes to our finances, our taxes, our estate planning. And I don't know why. Why are we rugged individualists? Because maybe it's because when we're farmers and ranchers and business owners, we take care of everything and we don't even think about it. We just do, right? We have that pride in everything that we do. But this is one place to protect all those things that are important to you, your family, your future, your business, your farm, your ranch, whatever it is. Those things that are important to you, think about it. Is it really worth not getting the expertise? So again, we love having everyone on the show every week. There's some really good information on this, by the way, on our website. We actually have a learning center on our website, and you go to Kennedy-financial.com. You can go in there. There's a place for business succession planning is what it's called. And all your farm and ranch stuff is actually underneath that because it is a business, right?
Yeah.
It's your business. So,
Yeah.
make sure you go in there and look at those resources. It's a great place to start. Think about the things that we talked about today and start considering those things. Those are really important. And I think, if you have questions or you want to re-listen to the show, because this is, go back when you can write things down. Don't do it while you're driving. That's my disclosure. But you can go back and rewrite things down. But you can do that by going on to KATXradio.com, KWBYradio.com if you're in our Stephenville area listeners, or our website, Kennedy-financial.com. We actually got, we're so excited. We're not only on iTunes, we got accepted onto iHeartRadio. You have to have so many listeners to get onto iHeartRadio.
Hey, that's a thing.
That's
great.
It is really good. So we're on there. So we have many people tell us, when I go to the gym, I put you on. I put you on and I put Joel Osteen on. I was like, oh, great. We're right up there with Joel Osteen. That's awesome, right?
It's good company
yes,
right there.
So, but you can do that, and it is, we try to give as much food for thought as we can. This is a way that we try to get out what we do. I had someone in the office last week. We were helping them with a bunch of tax planning stuff. They talked to 3 tax firms, and they said they just didn't give us anything. want to keep us protected, yes, that's what they do. But they said, why hadn't anybody told us about this? And we showed them right there in front of us how to save $100,000 in taxes in a matter of 45 minutes.
They were dumbfounded.
Right?
Yeah.
But that's what we do. And that's what this show is about, is just creating that awareness. So make sure you do that. Again, my name is Angela Robinson with Kennedy Financial Services. Don't forget, we've got a big election coming up, and we're going to have some really good information coming in the following weeks about all of that you don't want to miss.
Ooh, exciting.
Yes.
Exciting. Okay, so until next time, which will be next Monday at 8:30 a.m. sharp, right here on KATX and KWBY, we will leave you with that, but make sure and tune back in for next week's episode. We'll look forward to it.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you for joining us for Life Planning 101, brought to you by Kennedy Financial Services of Eastland. Tune in every Monday morning at 8:30 on KATX and again on Saturday morning at 9 o'clock on KATX and KWBY for more Life Planning 101.
Advisory services offered through Smart Money Group, LLC, a registered investment advisor. Securities offered through Carlton & Associates Incorporated, member FINRA SIPC. Kennedy Financial Services Incorporated is an independent of Carlton & Associates Incorporated and Smart Money Group, LLC.